My legs will not close. The pain is too much. The young waitress sobbed. She moved unsteadily through the diner, her knees locked together as if each step was torture. The floor was a pattern of black and white tiles. The air smelled of burnt coffee and sizzling bacon. And three powerful men fell silent when she spoke the words that broke the silence. I cannot close my legs. The pain is awful. Her voice was a faint whisper, but her injuries were loud and clear. What the crime boss did next would make the entire city hold its breath. Before I tell you, let us know where you are watching from. If this story moves you, please subscribe, because I have an even more incredible story for you tomorrow. Now, back to that moment. This is a story about what happens when the system fails the innocent, and an unlikely protector rises from the shadows. It proves that sometimes, justice does not come from a courtroom. It comes from those who refuse to look away. Christopher Giancarlo knew pain. He had inflicted enough of it to tell the difference between simple fear and true agony. But he was not ready for the young woman who crumpled against the polished steel counter. She was maybe 22 or 23 years old. Dark hollows were pressed under her eyes, deep and bruised. Her server's uniform was ripped near the bottom. She wore only one shoe. The other was battered and worn. Damp strands of light brown hair clung to her neck. Every time she shifted her weight, her entire body seemed to cry out in protest. With immense control, Giancarlo placed his coffee cup on the saucer. All his senses were on high alert. His men, Victor and Dante, became completely still. The music from the jukebox seemed to vanish, leaving only the sound of the woman's strained breathing and the faint sound of pots from the kitchen. The night cook himself was motionless, a spatula held in the air over the hot grill. The waitress stopped in the middle of the room. Her legs shook uncontrollably. Her hands were pressed against her lower stomach. Her face was flushed from suffering and something else. It was the shame and terror of a wound no one can see, but everyone can feel. Giancarlo stood up slowly. He kept his hands open and his movements smooth. "You are hurt," he said softly. His voice, normally full of authority, was now quiet and almost tender. The woman nodded. A single tear cut a clean path through her foundation. She had tried to hide a bruise blooming on her cheek. It was a new injury, maybe 12 hours old, and would be much darker by the morning. "My landlord," she choked out the words, swallowing as if it hurt. "Last night, he told me I was late on rent. He said I could pay in other ways." Her posture was not about being shy. It was about agony. A deep, spreading pain made her bite down on her lip with every tiny adjustment, every search for a stance that did not send fire through her body. "What is your name?" he asked. "Lyra," she said, her voice so low it sounded like a confession. "Lyra Hart." He broke the lock. When I tried to stop him, he shoved me. I hit the edge of the bed frame. There was something sharp. I think it cut me inside. I went to the emergency room, but I have no insurance. They told me that without a police report, they could not reduce the bill. Giancarlo heard Victor take a sharp breath behind him. Dante swore quietly in Italian, a dark prayer for revenge. Christopher Giancarlo's face became a cold, determined mask. It was the look he got before making a choice that would permanently alter someone's future. "You did the right thing coming here, Lyra. We will take care of you. That is a promise." He walked toward her from behind the counter, his steps slow and careful, aware of her pain. As he got closer, she flinched but stayed put. She had nowhere else to go. That helpless feeling was written all over her face. He motioned to the closest booth. "Sit down. Very slowly. Do not pretend you are okay." Lyra lowered herself onto the red seat with a sharp intake of breath. She grabbed the edge of the table, her knuckles turning white, breathing hard through her nose as if following instructions for managing extreme pain. "I should not be here. I know your reputation. The whole city does. But there was no one else." The cops do not care about people like me. My landlord, he knows people. He warned me what would happen if I ever told anyone. Giancarlo sat opposite her. His dark blue suit was perfectly pressed, even at 3:30 in the morning. He looked equally ready for a business meeting or a burial. Who does he know? She shook her head, then winced from the simple motion. I do not have any names. He just brags. He says he has friends who can make me vanish if I ever report him. He said that nobody would take the word of a waitress over a man who owns property. He said girls like me are disposable. The word just hung there, heavy and ugly. Disposable. Dante moved to the front door, crossing his arms and scanning the empty street outside. Victor went into the kitchen and spoke quietly to the night cook, who nodded and quickly disappeared into the back. The diner fell silent, filled only by the low hum of a cooler and Lyra's shaky breaths. Giancarlo leaned in. How long has he been doing this? 3 months. Her voice cracked. It started after I was laid off from my retail job. The store went out of business. He gave me a good deal on the apartment because I was in trouble. He told me I looked like his own daughter. I felt so lucky. Then one night he was drunk and rattling my doorknob, just checking. It got worse from there. Last night was the worst it has ever been. I threatened to call the police and he laughed at me. He said I did not have any evidence. He said people would just assume I was a tenant trying to get out of paying what I owed. Victor came back and knelt by the booth. His movements were surprisingly fluid for a large man. I got a hold of Doc Ferraro. He is coming now. It will be off the record. No files, no reports, unless you ask for them. Lyra's eyes went wide with panic. I cannot pay for a private physician. I make minimum wage. I have $70 to my name. You are not paying for anything. Giancarlo's voice was final. It was the same tone he used to end gang wars and broker deals. Dante, bring down the security gates. I want this place sealed. Nobody gets inside unless I say so. Victor, get the rest of the crew on the phone. I want this block secured in the next 15 minutes. The metal shutters came down with a loud bang, turning the diner into a private sanctuary. The hanging lamps threw long shadows, making the retro decor look serious, guarded, and menacing. Lyra looked at Giancarlo, her face a mix of fear and sudden hope. Why are you doing this for me? You have no idea who I am. I am a nobody. Giancarlo watched her for a long moment. He saw the terror, the agony, and the faint glimmer of hope that someone, for once, would not just look away. Because no one else would, he said. And because monsters like your landlord count on the fact that women like you have no one to help them. That idea needs to be changed. Victor slid a chair over, the sound loud against the tiled floor. Boss, if her landlord is protected like she thinks, this could be a problem. We could be starting something big over this. Giancarlo never took his eyes off Lyra. Then we will find out who protects him, and we will decide if their protection is more important than doing the right thing. From his post by the door, Dante spoke up, his voice heavy with his accent. This will get out. Everyone in this city will know you stepped in for a server. People will talk. They will draw conclusions. Let them talk. A new look settled on Giancarlo's face. It looked like resolution. Like a man who had been looking for a reason behind all the violence and had just found it in offering protection. Let them know there are some things that I will not allow. Let them know that even in my world, there are standards. And one of those standards is you do not hurt the defenseless and think you can just walk away. The kitchen door swung open. A man in his 60s walked out holding a worn doctor's bag. He had graying hair, calm hands, and the expression of a person who is impossible to surprise. It was Doc Ferraro. He saw Lyra, and his face immediately became serious with professional worry. Christopher, he acknowledged Giancarlo, before turning his full, gentle attention to Lyra. With your permission, I need to do an examination, miss. Then we can figure out what is wrong and what we need to do for you. Lyra looked at Giancarlo one last time, trying to find a lie or a hidden agenda in his eyes. All she found was a cold resolve and an anger that seemed to be for her. She gave a slow nod. Okay. Please. The pain is very bad. Giancarlo stood up. He gave her room but stayed close. Victor. Dante. Over here with me. Let the doctor work. The three men moved to the far side of the diner, their voices low and intense. Giancarlo took out his phone, and the screen lit up his face with a blue glow. In the reflection of a metal napkin holder, he watched Doc Ferraro talk quietly to Lyra. He could not hear her answers. After about 5 minutes, the doctor came over to them. His face was grim. This is worse than I can handle here. She has internal injuries. They might be life-threatening. I need to get her to my clinic. I need real tools and better light. What I can do in this diner is not enough. Giancarlo's jaw clenched. How bad is it? It is bad enough that if we wait for morning, she could suffer permanent harm. Dr. Ferraro's tone was professional, but fury burned in his eyes. This was no accident. The bruises show a sustained beating, and from what I can see, this is not a new occurrence. Old injuries are here, still healing. This person has been getting worse. The doctor's words landed like a weight in Giancarlo's gut. My car is parked out back. We are leaving now. Dr. Ferraro gave a sharp nod. I will be at my clinic in 20 minutes. He looked toward Lyra, who watched them, her expression filled with terror. Be careful with her. The shock is as bad as the pain. Giancarlo walked back to her, kneeling to meet her gaze. We have to move you to a place with the right kind of medical tools. My car is ready. Can you stand, or do I need to carry you? I can try, she whispered, her voice fragile and broken. I do not want to be a problem. You are not a problem. The strength in his own voice surprised him. You are a person in need of help. There is a very big difference. Victor went ahead of them, pushing open the diner's rear door that opened into the dark alley. Dante pulled the car up, a black sedan with darkened windows, its engine a low rumble in the 3:45 a.m. quiet. Giancarlo helped Lyra stand, and her sharp gasp of pain cut him like a razor. When her knees buckled, he reacted without thinking. He swept her into his arms, one arm beneath her legs and the other across her back, carefully avoiding her injuries. I can walk, she protested, her voice faint. Save your energy. His tone was kind, but firm. The drive to the doctor's office was 18 minutes along deserted streets. Lyra was in the back, with Giancarlo right next to her. Victor drove, and Dante sat in the front passenger seat, his eyes scanning everything around them. At first, she pressed herself against the door, keeping her distance, but every dip in the road made her wince. About halfway to the clinic, Giancarlo spoke softly. You can lean against me. It will be less painful than the door. She looked at him for a moment, then slowly shifted her weight toward him. The car hit a deep pothole and she reached out, grabbing his arm with a grip that was surprisingly powerful for her condition. Sorry, she breathed. Do not be sorry. He did not pull his arm away. She needed support. She was injured. She was a survivor. None of that required an apology. Tears began to stream down her face, the ones she had been fighting back since he found her. I thought about giving up earlier tonight after he was gone. I thought it would be less complicated. Giancarlo's voice grew hard as stone. That is what men like him rely on. They expect you to be too ashamed, too worn out, or too hurt to fight. They expect you to blame yourself. I did fight, she said. That is what made it so much worse. I tried to stop him, and he got angrier. He said I was ungrateful. He said he was generous for not putting me on the street. That is not generosity. Giancarlo stared out at the passing lights. Real generosity has no strings attached. It does not ask for fear as payment. The clinic was located in a quiet part of town, in a building that looked like any other house on the block. Dr. Ferraro was waiting. The lights in the rear of the building were on, and the door was unlocked. He took them straight to an examination room that was remarkably well stocked. Surgical steel shined under the intense lamps. The air smelled of disinfectant and something more. It smelled of safety. Giancarlo gently placed Lyra on the examination table. I will be just outside. The doctor is the very best. You are safe now. She caught his hand before he could step back. Please, do not go too far. I will be on the other side of this door. He gave her hand a reassuring squeeze. No one is getting past me. No one. The exam took 45 minutes. Giancarlo paced the small waiting room while Victor and Dante guarded the entrance. Every sound he heard from inside the room made him go rigid. He had commanded acts of violence, he had seen terrible things, but listening to Lyra's quiet whimpers of pain was different. It felt personal. It was infuriating. At last, Dr. Ferraro appeared, drying his hands, his face a mask of grim anger. There is internal tearing, extensive bruising around her pelvis, and a possible fracture in her tailbone. She will need complete rest, medication, and therapy. The damage is consistent with a violent sexual assault. Is it documented? Giancarlo's voice was ice. Everything. Photos, a detailed report, it is all done. The doctor looked him in the eye. But she is terrified of the police. She is sure that nobody will believe her. And from what she told me about her landlord's connections, she is probably right to be afraid. Let me handle the landlord. Giancarlo started for the exam room. Can we move her? It is not safe. She needs to remain here for a minimum of 12 hours. I have a recovery suite upstairs. She can be there for as long as she needs. Then we are staying too. Giancarlo looked at Victor. Set up a rotation with the men. Nobody gets near this building unless I clear them. Inside the room, Lyra was on her side, curled into a tight ball with a blanket pulled to her chin. Her face was ghostly pale, and her eyes were red from her tears. When Giancarlo came in, the look she gave him shattered the cold armor he wore. It was trust. A desperate, fragile trust from a person who had every reason to trust no one at all. The doctor says you need to rest. His voice was softer than it had been in years. There is a room upstairs. It is safe, and it is guarded. You will not be by yourself. Will you stay? Her question was barely a sound. I know it sounds strange. I do not know you, but I am afraid that if I fall asleep, he will be there when I wake up, that this is all a dream, and I am still in that apartment. Giancarlo took a chair and pulled it close to the table, sitting with the practiced stillness of a man who knew how to wait. I will stay, and when you wake up, you will be right here, and you will be safe. You have my word. Why are you helping me? Fresh tears rolled down her cheeks. Men in your world do not help people like me. Men in my world rarely get a chance to do something good. He met her gaze directly. Let this be my chance. She closed her eyes, and exhaustion finally overcame her fear. In a few minutes, her breathing became slow and steady. Giancarlo just sat there, watching her sleep. This broken young woman had wandered into his diner and had somehow cracked open a part of him he thought was long dead. It was the instinct to protect, not for money or for power, but simply to protect someone who deserved it. By 6:30 in the morning, Giancarlo had been on the phone 8 times. Victor stood by the window in the doctor's office, looking over a notepad. Dante came back from a scouting trip with a thick manila folder. Upstairs, Lyra was asleep, thanks to the painkillers, finally getting the rest her body needed. Giancarlo laid out the contents of the folder on the desk. There were photographs, property deeds, and financial reports. The face on the driver's license was forgettable. Kenneth Grimes, 52 years old, owned 4 buildings in the area. His credit was clean, and he had no criminal history. On the surface, he was just another ordinary landlord. Victor gestured with his pen. But there is another story. There always is with guys like him. Dante laid out a different set of papers, these from unofficial sources. Grimes does not own the buildings himself. They are financed by a shell corporation called Riverside Investments, and Riverside has links to the Calabrese family. Giancarlo froze. The Calabrese outfit ran their operations 2 neighborhoods away. They were not major league, but they were connected enough to be a serious problem. They specialized in extortion and loan sharking. It was not his business, not until now. How close is the relationship? Giancarlo asked, his voice flat. It is close. Dante pushed another document forward. Grimes has been paying the Calabrese organization for 3 years, 10% of his rental profits. In return, they provide the muscle to deal with difficult tenants. They pay police to ignore building violations. They make official complaints disappear. So if Lyra went to the authorities, the report would have vanished. Victor's voice was empty of emotion. 1 or 2 detectives on the Calabrese payroll would have made sure of it. A young woman like her, with no family and no money, against a landlord with powerful friends. She would have been called a liar, and maybe they would have even charged her with filing a false report. Giancarlo looked down at the photograph of Grimes. The man had soft features and thinning hair. He had the kind of face that could smile at you while he was figuring out how to destroy you. And the attack on Lara was not his first. Dante put 3 more files on the desk. I found 2 other complaints against him from the last year. Both were women, both were tenants, and both cases were closed. One of the women left the city. The other one took back her story after her apartment was broken into and destroyed. A pattern. Giancarlo put the picture down with deliberate care. He preys on vulnerable women. He gives them affordable housing, then twists that need against them, with the Calabrese family providing his shield. Precisely. Victor came to stand by the desk, which presents a complication. If we make a move on Grimes, the Calabrese family takes it as an attack on them. It might start a war we are not equipped to win. Or it is a chance to make a statement. Giancarlo settled back into his chair, pressing his fingertips together. That certain lines exist, that even protected men are forbidden to cross. That hunting defenseless women will not be permitted, no matter who offers them sanctuary. Boss, respectfully, the Calabrese family will not interpret it like that. Dante's tone was a clear warning. They will view it as a violation of their business, an unauthorized move on their turf. Angelo Calabrese is not famous for his forgiving spirit. Then we will ensure Angelo knows this is not about territory. Giancarlo's voice turned to ice. This is about principle. Our world has rules. One of those rules states that you do not target the helpless and call it commerce. The official channels are useless. Victor said it as the simple fact it was. Any official complaint will be buried. Any attorney Lyra retains will be crushed by Calabrese influence. The justice system cannot save her. So we operate outside the system. Giancarlo rose and walked to the window, staring down at the silent street. We will resolve this the old way. It will be direct, personal, and everyone will know exactly why it is taking place. You intend to target a Calabrese asset. Dante spoke slowly, ensuring his understanding was correct. With no request for permission, no discussion of territory, you will simply take him. I intend to bring justice to a man who has evaded it for far too long. Giancarlo pivoted to look at them. And I intend to make it known this is not about profit or turf. This is about establishing a boundary. Some actions are unacceptable, regardless of who collects your payments. Victor and Dante shared a look. This was not typical. Giancarlo had built his entire empire on measured decisions, tactical partnerships, and cautious diplomacy. To target someone shielded by the Calabrese family, without any diplomatic preparation, was dangerous, even reckless. What about the young woman? Victor inquired. If this goes badly, if the Calabrese family decides to retaliate, she instantly becomes a mark. Then we will guarantee she is shielded. Giancarlo's voice permitted no debate. And we will guarantee Grimes knows that what he did to Lyra was more than just wrong. It was his final error. What is your strategy? Dante shut the file, cautious. Giancarlo went back to his desk and started arranging papers in a deliberate sequence. First, we need better information. I need Grimes's daily patterns, his vulnerabilities, his contacts, and the places he feels most secure. Second, we make contact with a neutral third party, an intermediary who can speak to Angelo Calabresi without sparking an immediate war. You want to bargain? I want to provide an explanation. There is a distinction. Giancarlo lifted the files on the other victims. We will frame this for Angelo as a problem that brings shame to his own house. That a predator using his protection is poison to his good name. We offer him a chance to cut ties with Grimes before we make our move, and if he says no, our plan proceeds anyway. Giancarlo's face was a mask of certainty, and we will handle the fallout. But I will not allow that man to escape accountability for what he did to Lyra simply because he pays the right people. A stillness fell over the office. From the floor above, they could hear Doc Ferraro moving about, attending to his patient. Outside, the city was coming to life. People were leaving for their jobs. They were oblivious that inside this plain building, a choice was made that would create waves in the criminal world like a stone hitting calm water. Giancarlo met his men's eyes. We execute this perfectly. We execute this intelligently. But we will execute this. No young woman should have to endure this because the system is broken and criminals gave him cover. That stops today. Victor gave a slow nod. I will use my contacts, find someone who can deliver a message to Angelo Calabresi, and I will continue to collect intel on Grimes. Dante took the folder. By morning, we will have everything on him. Every vulnerability, every hidden detail. Good. Giancarlo walked to the door. I am going to see Lyra. When she is awake, she has a right to know that we are resolving this, that she can stop being afraid. He went up the stairs to the recovery area and gently opened the door. Lyra was still sleeping, her features finally calm, the marks of agony erased by medicine and deep fatigue. He sat back down in the chair near her bed, ready to stay, because that is what being protected meant. It was not only about eliminating a danger, but about being physically present, being a shield between her and the world, being the living evidence that someone cared enough to remain. Lyra came to at 2:15 in the afternoon. Her eyelids fluttered open, her expression confused until the memories flooded back. The ache was still there, muted by the drugs, but it was there. She shifted her head and saw Giancarlo in the chair, alert, watching the doorway with the focus of a man who had made a vow. You stayed. Her voice was raspy from sleep and tears. I gave my word. He got up and poured her some water from a container on the nightstand. Just small amounts. Doc, Ferraro mentioned you would be dehydrated. She took the glass, her hands trembling, and drank 3 tiny swallows before her stomach clenched. How long was I sleeping? Nearly 8 hours. Your system required it. He retrieved the glass, placing it down gently. How is the ache? Milder. Not absent, but milder. She moved a little, grimacing. Where am I? Doc Ferraro's private clinic. You have been protected here, but we must relocate you to a more secure place, somewhere you can recover in peace while we resolve this matter. A shadow of fear crossed her face. My apartment. I have to get my things, my papers, the pictures of my mother. My whole life is in there. We already dispatched people. Victor gathered all your personal effects, your clothing, documents, photographs. It is all being taken to a secure place now. You will never set foot in that apartment again. But the landlord, he will search for me. Let him search. Giancarlo's tone was flat. He will not locate you, and when we are finished, he will have far bigger worries than one missing tenant. Doc Ferraro came in, with a wheelchair, his face professionally impassive. It is time to relocate you, my dear. I have supplied Mr. Giancarlo with directions for your treatment. Painkillers every 6 hours. You must rest, with very little activity for the next 72 hours. Where am I being taken? Lyra glanced between the two men. To a place of safety. Giancarlo assisted her into the wheelchair, his touch surprisingly gentle for a man of his size. Somewhere my men can guard you properly, where you can mend without being afraid. The safe house was located in a peaceful suburban area, a two-level home with a high fence and little exposure to the street. Nothing about it hinted at danger or illicit business. It appeared like any other ordinary family home, which was precisely the intention: to be invisible, average, and safe. Victor greeted them at the entrance. The perimeter is locked down. 4 of my men are on a rotation, the windows are reinforced, and a rear escape route is ready, just in case we have to get her out fast. Inside, the home was decorated simply, but was welcoming. Giancarlo took Lyra upstairs to a room that was obviously prepared just for her: fresh linens, gentle lighting, and her personal items were already laid out on a bureau. The pictures of her mother were positioned with care on the bedside table. Lyra's eyes welled up with tears as she noticed them. "You got everything. We took everything we could locate." Victor remained at the door. "If anything is missing, just write it down. We will go back for it." "Thank you." She looked at the 3 men now gathered around her. These were violent criminals, yet they showed her more kindness than she had received in months. "I just do not understand your reasons for this. What do you expect me to do?" Giancarlo helped her settle into bed, pulling the blanket over her. "We expect you to recover, to feel secure, and to not live every night in terror. That is the only thing. People do not act without a motive." Her voice was heavy with the lessons of her past. "Everybody has an angle. Then let this be the payment for all of those times when nobody helped you, but they should have." He started for the door. "There is food ready in the kitchen. Your medicine is on the nightstand with the directions. One of my people will be stationed just outside this room constantly. If you require anything whatsoever, you just tell them." "But what if he comes for me?" "He will not." The conviction in Giancarlo's voice was unshakable. "But if he somehow tries, he must first get past 6 armed men to get to you. And he is not that courageous." Dante appeared at the door. "I have the first watch. The kitchen is full. The doctor left instructions for your food. Simple things: soup, toast, and nothing difficult to digest." Lyra gave a small nod, her exhaustion returning even after the long rest. "Are you coming back?" She fixed her gaze on Giancarlo. "Or is this our farewell?" "I am coming back." He stopped at the threshold. "This is not a farewell, Lyra. This is the start of making certain you never have to feel that fear again." Darkness settled on the safe house like a heavy quilt. Lyra rested in the bed, the windows slightly ajar to welcome the cool night air, while the sounds of crickets and faraway cars made for a calm atmosphere. She could detect quiet movement from downstairs, the soft tread of footsteps, the low voices of men as they switched shifts. At 8 o'clock, Dante delivered soup with crackers. At 10:30, a different man she hadn't seen before checked all the locks and windows. At midnight, she recognized Victor's voice below, giving orders in his usual calm and capable manner. She was supposed to be scared, supposed to be plotting her way out, supposed to be doubting every part of this arrangement. Instead, for the first time in 3 months, she felt secure. The awareness that someone was on guard, that someone would appear if she cried out, that someone had determined she was important enough to keep safe, was powerful, dreamlike, and profoundly needed. At 2 in the morning, sleep eluding her despite the deep fatigue, she moved carefully down the stairs. Each motion sent a jolt of pain, but the medicine made it bearable. Dante glanced up from his seat at the kitchen table, instantly on alert. "You need to be in bed." "I was not able to sleep. It is too silent." She rested her body against the doorframe. "I am accustomed to the sounds of the city. This place is too quiet." He offered a small smile. "That is a complaint I did not expect to ever hear." "Too much quiet. Is he truly going to see this through?" She asked the question that had been on her mind the entire evening. "Or is this a short-term thing, until I become a problem?" "The boss does not believe in short-term things." Dante's voice was firm with belief. "When he gives his word, he honors it, even if it costs him, especially if it costs him." "But why?" What does he get out of this? Perhaps he gets nothing. Maybe that is the entire reason. Dante rose from his chair and went to get her a glass of water. Sometimes, doing what is right is the only reward you need. The boss has not had many opportunities to do the right thing. This is his opportunity. He will not let it go to waste. Lyra took the glass of water and gazed out the window toward the dark street. A vehicle was parked on the corner, and she could see two shapes inside it. More guards, more people watching. An entire force of dangerous men, all focused on protecting one injured waitress. It seemed unreal, like a fantasy she would soon wake from. But the ache in her bones was real. The prescription bottle on the kitchen counter was real. The sound of Dante's even breathing just behind her was real. This was actually happening. This safety, this concern, this strange rescue provided by a crime boss who decided she had value. And for that night, for one single precious night, she allowed herself to think it might last. Giancarlo came back to the house at 7:30 the following morning. He carried a leather briefcase, heavy with the knowledge that would alter everything. Lyra was already up, positioned gently in the living room, drinking tea that Dante had made for her. She appeared healthier, with some color back in her cheeks, and the haunted expression in her eyes had softened. He placed the briefcase on the coffee table with a very deliberate motion. "We have to discuss Kenneth Grimes." Her hand shook just a little as she held the teacup. "What is there to discuss? About what we discovered?" Giancarlo unlatched the briefcase and took out the top folder. "For the last 18 hours, my people have been collecting information. What they have learned is much worse than we first believed." Victor came in from the kitchen holding his own stack of papers. "Boss, our final witness just gave her official account. That brings the total to 7. 7. Lyra's voice was barely a whisper. 7 women. Giancarlo laid out photographs on the coffee table. Every one of them was a tenant of Grimes in the last 4 years. Every one of them was vulnerable. Every one of them was his target. He gestured to the first picture. Jessica Ramirez, 24 years old, a single mother. Grimes attacked her 6 months after she became his tenant. She filed a police report. The case was dismissed for lack of sufficient evidence. Lyra looked intently at the picture. What became of her? She relocated 3 states from here. Victor's voice was empty of emotion. She was too frightened to remain in the city, so she abandoned her family, her friends, a career she enjoyed, and just fled. Giancarlo shifted to the next photograph. Emma Pete, 19, a college student who worked 2 jobs to pay her tuition. Grimes waited until her rent was late, then he made her the same proposition he made to you. She said no. He attacked her regardless. Did she tell anyone? She made an attempt. Victor produced a police report. She filed the complaint. She provided a thorough account. One detective visited her for an interview, and then there was silence. The case stalled. No more contact, no real inquiry. It just vanished within the system because of his connection to the Calabrese family. Lyra's voice was filled with dawning realization. They made the problem disappear. Precisely, Giancarlo went on, moving through the pictures. Sarah Kim, 26, an immigrant with poor English skills. Grimes used that against her. He convinced her she would be sent back to her country if she said anything. She took him at his word. She existed in a state of fear for 8 months before she finally left the United States. Dante came in holding another folder. "Boss, we have verification for the 2 victims from 3 years ago. Both incidents fit the exact same profile. Complaints were made, evidence was taken, and then, without warning, the cases were shut down. The same detective worked on both of them, the very same one." "Let me take a guess." Victor's voice was full of certainty. "A detective named Paul Hendris. How did you figure that out?" "Because Hendris has been receiving money from the Calabrese family for 5 years. Dante put the folder on the table. "Any complaint that might affect their business gets sent straight to him. He guarantees that nothing ever results from it. He has a perfect history of closed cases and 0 arrests." Lyra placed her teacup down with a trembling hand. So even if I had contacted the police, even if I had reported him right away, it would have made no difference. No legal difference. Giancarlo's voice was severe. The system is broken, designed to shield men like Grimes and the criminal groups who profit from them, which is exactly why we are going around the system completely. He took out a much thicker folder, this one filled with financial statements. But this is the part that makes it so much worse. Grimes does not only attack his tenants, he makes money from it. Take a look at this. He laid out the bank records. Every single time a woman makes a complaint and later withdraws it, Grimes gets a deposit from a company called Riverside Investments, $5,000 for each incident. They are paying him for this. Lyra sounded sickened. The Calabrese family is paying him to attack women, not in a direct way, Victor explained. The deposits are labeled as reimbursements for property maintenance, but the pattern is far too regular to be an accident. For every dropped case, for every woman who vanishes, Grimes gets a payment. They were paying him to be a predator. How many were there? Lyra asked. 14 deposits in 4 years. Giancarlo's jaw was clenched. 14 women that we have found. There could be others who were never reported, who were too scared or too embarrassed or too certain that nobody would listen to them. The room fell into a heavy silence, the full weight of their discovery pressing down on them like a shroud. This was not a single evil man who made one horrible decision. This was methodical, structured, and lucrative. What about proof? Lyra gestured to the files that covered the table. You have all of these documents: bank statements, witness accounts, police files. Can you not give this to someone? The FBI, a district attorney. We could do that. Victor's tone made it clear they had already explored that option. But this is where the issue lies. The financial records were acquired using techniques that would be thrown out in a legal proceeding. The witness accounts come from women who are too afraid to ever appear in court. And all the police files indicate that the cases were officially dropped because there was not enough evidence. So from a legal standpoint, this is all useless. Giancarlo said it without any sugarcoating. No district attorney would take this on. No judge would permit it. And trying to use the legal system would tip off the Calabrese family that we were targeting their asset. They would bury everything, threaten the witnesses, and make all this proof vanish. So what is the reason for collecting all this? Lyra gestured at the papers again. If you cannot use any of it, it can be used. Giancarlo's voice became ice cold. Just not inside a courthouse. This proof tells us exactly the kind of man Kenneth Grimes is. It outlines his habits, his tactics, his network of protection, and most critically, it reveals his weaknesses. You are going to deal with him. It was not a question, but a statement of fact. We are providing the only kind of justice that is going to be effective. He looked straight at her. The type of justice that the system will not deliver. But before we act, I have to be sure you know what that entails. What we are planning to do is outside of any law. It will be final and cannot be undone. Will he be stopped? Lyra's voice was firm. Will it keep other women from experiencing what I experienced? What Jessica and Emma and Sarah and all the others experienced? Yes, then I know what it means. She held his gaze. And I want you to do it. Giancarlo shut the briefcase. Victor, get in touch with our source. Arrange a meeting with Angelo Calabrese for tomorrow. We are going to show him this, the evidence, and give him a chance to cut Grimes loose. And if he says no, then we proceed without his consent. Giancarlo rose to his feet. We will make it understood that protecting predators has a cost, even for a family as powerful as the Calabrese organization. Dante collected the papers. What about Detective Hicks? He has a role in this as well. One thing at a time. Giancarlo walked to the door. First, we take care of Grimes. After that, we will figure out what to do with the corruption that shielded him. The meeting with Angelo Calabrese took place at 10:30 the following morning at a neutral site, a social club in Little Italy that had brokered peace between families for 3 generations. Giancarlo showed up with Victor, leaving Dante at the safe house with Lyra. The briefcase holding the evidence rested between them like a primed explosive. Angelo Calabrizzi was 68 years old and silver-haired, bearing the burden of a life in organized crime with a practiced composure. He sat opposite Giancarlo, with two of his men behind him, his face a careful mask. "You asked for this meeting." Angelo's voice was refined, revealing nothing. "I am here to listen." Giancarlo unlatched the briefcase and laid the files out on the table. "Kenneth Grimes. He is one of your protected assets. He pays your organization for protection. In return, you shield his activities." Angelo looked at the papers but made no move to pick them up. "What is your point?" "This is a normal arrangement. It does not involve you. It involves me when his activities include the repeated assault of vulnerable women." Giancarlo slid the witness testimonies across the table. "We have 7 confirmed victims, and probably more who were too afraid to speak up. Your protection allowed a predator to operate without any consequences for 4 years." Angelo's face tightened just a little. "You come to my territory to give me a lecture on morals, a man in your line of work. I came to give you a chance to separate yourself from something that will tarnish your name." Giancarlo's voice stayed perfectly calm. "When this story gets out, and it will get out, the Calabrizzi name is going to be tied to protecting a man who hurts women. Your entire organization will be connected to profiting from violence against women. That is not the kind of reputation you want to leave behind. Are you threatening to expose me? I am telling you what is going to happen." Victor spoke, his first words of the meeting. "We have all the proof we need. We have the witnesses right here, right now. This can stay quiet between us. But if you decide to keep protecting Grimes, then we will have to use channels that are not so quiet." Angelo stayed silent for a long time, looking over the files. Finally, he lifted his gaze. "What is it that you want?" "I want you to remove your protection from Grimes." Giancarlo locked eyes with him, his stare unwavering. "There will be no retaliation against his victims. There will be no interference when we take care of this in our own way. You want me to let you go after an asset who pays us on time. I want you to admit that some things are not worth the money, that your family has lines you will not cross, that you do not shield predators no matter how much they can pay." The air in the room grew thick with tension. Angelo's men moved almost imperceptibly. Victor was completely motionless, his hands in plain sight, but he was ready. Giancarlo betrayed no anxiety, showing a confidence that was almost arrogant. At last, Angelo answered, "You are giving me a very hard choice, Christopher. If I say yes, it makes me look weak. If I say no, you ruin my reputation. I lose no matter what. You lose a lot less if you choose your principles over your profits." Giancarlo shut the briefcase. "And you get something much more important: respect. The understanding that even in this world there are boundaries, that the Calabrizzi family does not give shelter to monsters." Angelo watched him for another long moment before he gave a slow nod. "Grimes's protection is gone. It is finished right now. Whatever you do to him is your concern. But his properties will be returned to Riverside Investments. That is not up for discussion. The properties will be transferred to his victims." Giancarlo's voice was final. "We start with Lyra Hart. She will get his main building, the same one she rented from him. The rest will go to the other women whose lives he ruined. That is the only way this is going to end. You are demanding quite a bit. I am demanding justice. There is a very big difference." Angelo settled back in his chair, thinking. Then he held out his hand. "Agreed. The properties will be transferred. Grimes is no longer under our protection. But you need to understand this, Christopher. If the way you handle this brings trouble to my family, if it brings the wrong kind of attention, then we will have this talk again, and it will be much less friendly." Giancarlo took his hand. "I understand completely. This will be silent, professional, and final." By 6 o'clock that night, Kenneth Grimes was in a chair inside a warehouse on the industrial side of the waterfront. His hands were zip-tied behind him, and two of Giancarlo's men stood on either side. The room was poorly lit and cold, with the smell of rust and old concrete in the air. A single light bulb dangled from the ceiling, creating sharp shadows. Grimes had been picked up from his office at 4:30. There was no warning and no explanation, just two men showing up and leading him to a car that was waiting. Now he sat there, sweating even though it was cold, his fear coming off him in visible waves. Giancarlo walked in at 6:15. Victor was right behind him, holding the briefcase. He took a chair and sat down in front of Grimes, not saying a word for a whole minute, simply staring. He let the terror grow. "Do you have any idea who I am?" Giancarlo asked at last. Grimes gave a frantic nod. "Everybody knows who you are. Then you must know that I do not make empty threats. I do not bother with actions that have no meaning. When I do something, it is absolute and it is forever. Do you follow me? I have no idea why you brought me here." Grimes's voice trembled. "I have done nothing to cross you. My business is nowhere near your part of the city. Your business is under the protection of the Calabrese family." Giancarlo's voice was flat. Or it was. "That protection was cancelled 2 hours ago. That means you are sitting in this chair with no one to call, nothing to bargain with, and no escape except the one I give you." The blood drained from Grimes's face. "I pay my dues. I have never been late with a single payment. We are no longer accepting your money." Victor opened the briefcase and started to arrange the files. Because the Calabrese family does not give sanctuary to rapists, especially not when the proof is this strong. Grimes looked at the files, and his expression shifted from confusion to pure panic. "Those are sealed police documents. There is no way you could have those. We have it all." Giancarlo's voice became ice. 7 victims, 14 payments, 4 years of calculated assault shielded by dirty cops and money. But as of this afternoon, all that protection is finished. "What is it you want?" Grimes's voice broke. "Is it money? I have savings. I have property. I can give you whatever you want. I want you to understand one thing with perfect clarity." Giancarlo leaned in closer. "You have 2 options, and only 2. And you have to make your choice right this second. There are no other deals. There is no more talking." "What are my choices?" "You walk out of here tonight. You sign over every single one of your 4 properties to the people I name. You take out all the money from your bank accounts, and you leave half of it here with me to give to your victims. You vanish. A new town, a new identity, a new life, and you will never, ever return." "And the second option?" A cold, hollow smile appeared on Giancarlo's face. "You say no, and I will show everyone exactly what we do with predators who think they can hide behind a broken system. They will find parts of your body over the next 3 weeks, and every single organization in this town will know the reason why. They will know Christopher Giancarlo does not let men who prey on the weak get away with it." Grimes was trembling now, and tears began to stream down his face. "I will go. I will sign anything you want me to. Just please. I have a family. So did your victims." Victor's voice was hard and empty. "So did Lyra Hart when you took her life apart. It is strange how you suddenly care so much about family. The documents are already drawn up." Giancarlo took out a sheaf of papers. "Sign them right now." Grimes's hands were shaking so much he almost could not grip the pen that Victor gave him after snipping the zip ties. The first paper was a property transfer deed. The building at 427 Oak Street would go to Lyra Hart. Complete ownership, no debts, no strings attached. Sign on the bottom line, initial every page. Giancarlo watched each movement of the pen like a warden observing a final sentence being carried out. Grimes signed his name, his hand shaking so badly the letters were almost illegible. Victor pushed another document in front of him. The building at 815 Maple Avenue now belonged to Jessica Ramirez. Her name left Grimes's lips as a broken whisper. "She disappeared years ago." Giancarlo's voice was devoid of emotion. "We found her. She is about to learn she owns a property worth $400,000. Consider it payment for what you did to her. Now sign." The pen scratched against the page, creating another signature. Another part of Grimes's empire was stripped away and given to the women he had tormented. 6 more papers came after that. Each document represented a property transfer or the draining of a bank account. It was justice served not in a courtroom, but through a stack of paperwork. When Grimes finally put the pen down, he had signed away everything but the clothes he was wearing and $20,000 to start a new life. Victor gathered the papers, took a photo of every signature with his phone, and sent the images to a lawyer who was ready to file them immediately. Everything was going to be official by the end of the night. It would be legal, binding, and final. "You have 72 hours to get out of this city," Giancarlo said, looking down at the defeated man. "If you are here after that deadline, or if we catch wind of you contacting any of your old tenants, this deal is cancelled. We will then move on to our second option." "I understand." Grimes could barely form the words. "I will be gone tonight." "Not so fast," Giancarlo said with a nod to Victor. "There is one last thing." Victor took out a phone, switched it to record, and aimed the camera at Grimes. "You are going to give us a statement. A complete confession. Every attack, every threat, every dollar you took to ruin the lives of those women, you will say it all for the camera." "No," Grimes protested, shaking his head. "That's evidence. They could use it against me." "Precisely," Giancarlo replied with a cold smile. "Think of it as insurance. If you ever violate our agreement, come back, or bother any of those women, this confession gets sent to every news outlet in the state. It will go to the FBI. It will spread across the internet. You will become infamous for the worst possible reasons." "But you said if I cooperated," Grimes pleaded. "I said you would be allowed to leave alive," Giancarlo corrected him. "This is a part of your cooperation." Victor held the camera perfectly still. "Start talking." The confession took 23 minutes. Grimes described every single assault in cold, procedural detail. He named every victim. He admitted to every payment. When he finished, he was sobbing without restraint, mucus dripping from his nose. He was a pathetic sight, a predator who had lost all his power and protection. Victor stopped the recording and backed up the file in 3 different places. "It is done. You can go now." Just like that, Giancarlo turned and walked toward the warehouse exit. "You have 72 hours. I suggest you use them well." They abandoned Grimes in the chair, his hands untied, surrounded by the scattered papers, weeping in the faint light. One of Giancarlo's men was assigned to drive him to his office to get 1 suitcase, and then take him to the bus station. By the next morning, Kenneth Grimes would be 3 states away, forced to begin again with absolutely nothing. Giancarlo arrived back at the safe house at 9:45 p.m. Lyra was waiting in the living room. She was reading a book Dante had given her, anything to keep her mind off the agonizing weight. Her head shot up as he came in, her expression a perfect mix of hope and terror. "It is finished," he said, placing his briefcase on a table. "Grimes signed over everything. The building is now yours. You own it completely. There is no mortgage and there are no strings attached. The transfer will be officially registered tomorrow morning." Lyra just stared at him. "The building," she whispered. "My building." "Your building," he confirmed. "It has 4 units. 2 are occupied by reliable long-term tenants who always pay their rent on time. A 3rd unit is empty and has already been professionally cleaned. You can move in as soon as you want. The 4th unit is yours to rent out for extra income or to keep empty. The choice is yours." "I own a building," she repeated, the words feeling foreign in her mouth. "I went from being unable to pay rent to owning an entire building." "Justice isn't just about punishing someone," Victor said, as he entered behind Giancarlo. "Sometimes it is about restoring what was taken. Lyra, you were owed safety and a place to call home. Now you have them. What happened to him?" "Grimes is gone." Giancarlo took a seat across from her. "By tomorrow evening, he will be in a different state with a new identity and a new life. If he has any sense, he will never show his face here again. And if he's not that smart, Dante added. He will find out that our deal only keeps him safe as long as he stays far away. The confession Victor filmed guarantees it. One bad decision, and his entire history becomes public. He won't take that chance. Lyra sat in silence for a while, letting it all sink in. What about the others? She finally asked. The other women are being notified as we speak. Victor held up his phone to show her a list. Jessica Ramirez is now the owner of a building in the suburbs. Emma Chen was given a large cash payment and the title to a small apartment building. We are using family contacts to locate Sarah Kim, who fled the country. We are ensuring that every single one of his victims gets what they are owed. This doesn't feel real, Lyra said, looking at the three of them. It is very real. Giancarlo's voice was solid. And it is done. The deeds are being registered. The money is being wired. By midday tomorrow, it will all be legally binding and irreversible. Why? The question that had been weighing on her finally came out. Why do all of this? Why start a fight with the Calabrese family? Why not just keep the properties for yourselves? Because some things are more important than making money, Giancarlo said, looking directly at her. Those properties were purchased with the profits Grimes made by preying on helpless women. If we sold them, we would be part of that filth. Giving them to you and the others is the only right thing to do. Victor rose to his feet. We should give you some time to rest. You have a big day tomorrow. You need to inspect the property, meet with lawyers, and start planning your new future. What do you want from me? Lyra's voice was quiet. There has to be a cost for something like this. There is no cost, Giancarlo said as he walked to the door. You don't owe us a thing. This was about justice. It was not a business deal. But men like you always want something in return. Then you can think of me as the exception, he said, pausing in the doorway. Get some sleep, Lyra. When you wake up tomorrow, you will be a property owner. You will be someone with security. You will be someone who never has to fear a landlord again. The door clicked shut, leaving Lyra by herself to process the unbelievable truth of her new life. News traveled through the neighborhood like wildfire. By 10:30 the next morning, as the new property deeds were made official at the county records office, 3 separate people had already called the local diner to ask if the rumors were true. By noon, Lyra arrived to see her building for the first time as its owner, and a small group of people had gathered on the other side of the street, their eyes filled with curiosity. The waitress who got hurt. That was the first name they gave her, the girl who passed out at Giancarlo's table. But the story changed by that afternoon. She became the girl Giancarlo defended, the girl he started a war for. Inside the Italian bakery on the corner, Mrs. Duca whispered to her clients, "Did you hear what he did? He challenged the Calabrese family for that poor girl. He forced Grimes to sign away his entire fortune." The man vanished, skipped town in the dead of night like a common criminal. Over at the barber shop, the men argued about the consequences. It's a risky play to go after Calabrese holdings. But Giancarlo must have gotten the okay. Angelo would never have allowed it otherwise. At the laundromat, mothers talked about it as they folded laundry. Maybe he's not the monster everyone thinks he is. Maybe there are certain lines even a man like him won't cross. Did you hear? He gave her the entire building. He didn't take it for himself. He just handed it over. By that evening, Giancarlo entered the same diner where Lyra had collapsed just 3 days before, and the atmosphere was different. The room still fell silent. A wave of fear still washed over the customers. But beneath it all, there was a new feeling. It was a mix of curiosity and respect. It was the complicated realization that sometimes a monster will do terrible things to another monster, and that act can change him into something else entirely. The owner, an old man named Sal, who had owned the diner for 30 years, came to the table with a cup of coffee. "It is on the house, Mr. Giancarlo. And I just wanted to tell you, what you did for that girl was a good thing. It was the right thing." Giancarlo took the coffee without a word, but Sal kept talking. "My own daughter works the late shift and sometimes has to walk home by herself. The fact that you will not tolerate men like Grimes around here means everything to a father. It means everything to our families. I was not seeking praise. I am aware. That is precisely why it is so important. He went back to the counter, but his sentiment lingered. At 11:15 that night, one of Giancarlo's top men called him. Boss, we have something happening. It is not a problem, but it is a situation you should see. What kind of situation? People from 3 businesses on Oak Street showed up at the warehouse. They came to express their thanks. They have gifts, some wine, food, and an envelope with cash. They are waiting for you outside. Tell them to go home. I have no interest in their gratitude. They refuse to leave. They feel the need to show their appreciation for what you did. They said the neighborhood feels safer, and their daughters, sisters, and wives can finally rest easy. Giancarlo paused, then replied, Fine, 5 minutes. No long speeches. When he got to the warehouse, a small group was waiting just as described. They were shopkeepers, managers from restaurants, and regular people who had lived under the shadow of Grimes and the corrupt system that shielded him. They stood there looking anxious as Giancarlo came closer, unsure of how he would react to their presence. An older woman came forward with a box from a bakery. Mr. Giancarlo, my granddaughter had a job in one of Grimes's buildings. He made improper suggestions. She decided to quit instead of reporting him because she was sure it would do no good. What you accomplished, by making him pay and forcing him out, you delivered the justice the law refused to. We just wanted you to know that we noticed. And we are thankful. Giancarlo took the box, his face showing no emotion. This was a matter for the law to resolve. The system failed, which is the only reason I had to get involved. But you did resolve it, a younger man added. You acted when the system would not. That means a great deal to this neighborhood. That does not make me some kind of hero. Giancarlo's tone was sharp. I am the same man today that I was yesterday. This changes nothing about me. Perhaps not, the older woman offered a small smile. But it does change our opinion of you. There is a world of difference between a man who takes whatever he desires and one who shields people who have no defense. It is possible to be both. We see that now. The group departed soon after that. He accepted their offerings but kept their expressions of thanks at a distance. Yet, a change had occurred. The neighborhood's view of Christopher Giancarlo had shifted from simple fear to something far more nuanced. He was still a dangerous man, someone you never wanted to cross, but he was also a person who might, in the right situation, take action when no one else would. In the safe house, Lyra was watching the local news at 11:30. The incident had become a television story, but it was presented in a vague and cleaned-up way. Property owner Kenneth Grimes has suddenly left the area after signing over several properties to his former tenants. Sources indicate that this strange deal was organized by unidentified community advocates. The Calabresi family offered no comment. Community advocates? Lyra nearly smiled at the term. It was certainly one way to describe what Giancarlo did. Dante was in his normal spot near the door. You realize what this will lead to, don't you? You are about to become well known in this area. The girl who Giancarlo rescued. I have no desire to be well known. It is too late for that. The story is already spreading. People are calling you courageous. They are calling him a hero. This entire event is turning into a local legend. He is not a hero, Lyra said softly. He is a difficult man who did one right thing. It does not wash away the rest of what he is. No, Dante conceded. But it does not wash away what he did either. Sometimes a person is two things at once. Sometimes the world is too messy for simple categories. Lyra could see the lights of the city through the window. Out there somewhere was her building, with her name now on the title. Out there somewhere, Grimes was on the run with only his humiliation and his fear. Out there somewhere, 6 other women were finding out that a part of what was taken from them had been returned. And out there somewhere, Christopher Giancarlo was facing the odd new reality of being viewed as something more than just a threat, of being complex, of being human. The town used to whisper about his illegal acts, his brutality, his influence. Now they were whispering about something different. They talked about the Mafia boss who defended a waitress, who challenged the Calabresi family on a point of honor, who gave buildings away instead of taking them for himself. The whispers were going to travel, the story was going to expand, and life would never be exactly the same. 3 weeks passed, and for the first time since it happened, Lyra could walk without any pain. The physical therapy arranged by Doc Ferraro was proving effective. Her internal damage was mending. The dark bruises had faded to yellow and then disappeared completely. Her body was making a slow but sure comeback, taking back its own territory from the trauma. She was standing in the empty unit on the third floor of her building, the one Grimes had filled with storage, which was now fully restored. The walls had a fresh coat of paint, the floors were new, and sunlight poured in through spotless windows. This place would be her home. It was not a rental, it was not borrowed, it belonged to her. Victor had personally managed the renovation, making sure every detail was exactly as she wanted. The kitchen was full of new appliances. The bathroom had been entirely remade. Her bedroom looked out to the east, designed to capture the morning sun. The apartment was not large, but it was flawless. It was a safe place created from the remnants of a nightmare. The other two apartments were still occupied by their original tenants, an old couple on the ground floor and a young teacher on the one above. Both had been reliable with rent for years. Both had been secretly terrified of Grimes, and both had cried with relief when Lyra told them she was the new landlord, promising them she would be fair and keep the building in good repair. She was discovering what it meant to be a property owner, with its taxes and insurance policies and city regulations. Victor had put her in touch with a trustworthy accountant. Dante had suggested a handyman she could count on. The building was producing a small amount of income, enough that Lyra did not need to work so many shifts just to get by. But she still felt the need to work. Being still made her feel like she was just waiting for something else to go wrong. At 2:30 that afternoon, she went into a small cafe just 3 blocks away from her building. It was a comfortable spot with local customers, and it was owned by a woman named Helena, who knew all about Grimes. Helena had a history of giving jobs to his old tenants, no strings attached, just a steady paycheck. "I need a job," Lyra said, her hands firm on the counter. "Something part-time with flexible hours. I have a building to manage now, so I have to be around for my tenants, but I need the structure of work." Helena looked at her, recognition dawning in her eyes. "You are the one. The girl people are whispering about. The one Giancarlo took under his wing. My name is Lyra Hart, and he did help me. But I refuse to be known only for that. What I do from this point on will define me." A smile formed on Helena's face. "How about starting tomorrow? The morning shift runs from 7 to 1. It is a relaxed shift. We do not deal with the late-night rush. It is mostly the same faces every day, just coffee and talk. That would be wonderful." "I have one rule," Helena said, her face turning serious. "If you ever feel threatened, if any customer causes a problem, you come to me right away. In this place, we protect our own." "Thank you," Lyra's voice wavered. "That means more to me than I can say." Later that night, Giancarlo stopped by the building, his first visit since he signed it over. Lyra was on the third floor turning an empty apartment into a place to live when he arrived. "This place looks great," he said from the doorway, waiting for an invitation to enter. "You have done a lot of good work here." "Victor was a big help," she answered, putting down a lamp and waving a hand around the space. "I never imagined I would have something of my own, and now this whole place is mine. It just has not sunk in yet." "It is real," he said, "and you earned it." He hesitated for a second. "I came to see how you were settling in, to be sure you had what you needed. I am starting part-time at Helena's cafe tomorrow. It will give me something to do as I learn how to be a landlord." "Good. A new routine will help." He shifted, the fading sunlight hitting his face. "My protection is still in place. You will not notice my men, but they are here, ensuring no one causes you any trouble. How long will they be here? For as long as it takes, his tone was resolute. Grimes is gone, but the world is full of men like him. They might look at you and see an easy target. We need to show them you are not. I am not an easy target, she stated, looking directly at him. Never again. I made it through that. I have a building. I have a way to make money. I have a chance at a new life. That is not weakness. No, he agreed, a small smile appearing on his face. It is not. But having people watch your back does not make you weak. Think of it as an insurance policy. Why are you still doing all this? The question she had been holding back finally came out. You dealt with Grimes. You settled the score. You could just leave. Why are you still here? Giancarlo fell silent, his gaze drifting to the city street outside the window. For nearly my entire life, power was about domination, about getting what I wanted, no matter the cost. He looked back at her. Seeing you put your life back together, being a part of that, is a power I never knew. It is the kind of power that has value. You are not my keeper, I am aware, but I am choosing this responsibility. He started for the exit. Making the choice to protect someone instead of using them is the best thing I have done in 10 years. What about the others? Lyra's voice made him pause. The other women, Jessica and Emma, and Sarah. How are they doing? Jessica turned her building into a sanctuary for mothers raising children alone. Emma graduated and is sending out applications for law school. And Sarah just got back from her trip. She broke down in tears for a solid hour when she found out about her building. Pride was clear in his voice. They are all starting over. They are all moving on. This is all because of you. It happened because the people in charge did nothing and we had to do something. He stopped in the doorway. You should get some sleep. You have a fresh start tomorrow. Your first day at a job where you can finally feel safe. When he was gone, Lyra went to the window and looked down at the street. The city was lighting up, bathing her neighborhood in a gentle light. It was her neighborhood, her building, her home, her future. Her mind went back to that diner. The agony, the terror, the frantic search for anyone strong enough to stop the pain. She remembered the whispered sentence that changed everything. My legs will not close. The pain is too much. But now she moved without hurting. She could hold a job without looking over her shoulder. She could rest peacefully at night. She could build her own future and plan for tomorrow, instead of only remembering yesterday. The crime lord she thought was just another monster had become her unlikely savior. He was not a good man. But he was a man who made a decision when it counted. He found a new reason to fight in shielding others from harm. He showed the world that even a man like him could have a code, could put values over money, and could bring justice where there was none. The town would go on telling tales, turning her story into a myth. But Lyra would go on with her life, focusing on her work and her home. She was not the broken girl in the diner anymore. She was not a helpless target waiting to be rescued. She was Lyra Hart, a woman who owned her own building, a survivor who discovered that help can appear from the most surprising corners, brought by flawed individuals who were not heroes or villains. They were just people making choices, trying to be better than they were. And in the end, that was what mattered. I am so glad you have followed this story all the way through to its powerful conclusion. If you thought this story was moving, you have to see the next one. The journey gets even more intense, and I promise it is something you will not expect. So stick around. The next video is right there on the screen. Go ahead and click it to jump into a new tale that will completely captivate you. Believe me, it is worth your time. If this story touched your heart, leave a like to help others find it. Share it with someone who needs to hear that help can come from the most unexpected places, and comment below. What would you have done in Lyra's situation? I read every single comment. This content was carefully researched, crafted, and manually edited by our team to bring you meaningful lessons and inspiration. Thank you for being here, you.